So there is so much to learn from classic, timeless processing techniques of the past. We can always use them in modern ways and adapt them to our tracks, even if they weren't originally intended for the genre that we're making. Let me show you 7 of my favorite ones and how we can use them. But before we dive into it, if you're looking to enhance your creative output, we're running a live 30-day cohort-based program called Create 30. Students will be making a new musical idea every single day. It's going to be an awesome experience, so if you're interested, go check that out. So the first technique, if I'm not mistaken, originated from hip hop. It's really useful. Check out this loop that I've got here. So it's a cool loop, it's pretty lo-fi, but it's lacking a little bit of low end. So what I'm gonna do here is I've just got an operator just on its basic preset. I'm just gonna add a sine wave note. Let's try and find a good note. So I'm gonna hit solo on this one, maybe a bit deeper. And I'm just going to be adding a little bit of weight to this kick drum. So if you're currently listening on your iPhone, you might need headphones to hear this, but the sine wave that we've got so far just sounds like this. And what I'm going to do is go grab a gate, and I'm just going to place it after this operator with the sine wave on it. And then I'm going to expand this gate and enable the sidechain trigger and get the audio from this hip hop loop. And what's going to happen is this audio from this track is going to cause the gate to open and you'll hear this sine wave come through. So check it out. Right? So far so good, but the actual clap here is triggering that as well. And I just want to add a little bit of thickness to the kick drum in this case. So I'm going to use this EQ here to make it so it only triggers when the kick drum or the low frequency spike information plays. And when this clap plays, it's not going to trigger. So let's just solo this. And I'm also going to solo this sine wave here. And we're just going to sort of feel around and try and get a good spot. So I don't want it to trigger when that clap is playing. So I'm going to pull the threshold up a bit. So you can see in this little diagram, the clap down here won't be triggering it. So this should be all good. So now we just have that sine wave that's coming through when the low frequency information is coming from this loop. And if we layer it with this loop now, that just adds so much more weight and thickness to the kick drum and the low end in this sound, which is really important for hip hop because you need that low end to be really kicking. So this is a great technique if you're using something like this, which is like a lo-fi loop that doesn't have quite enough low end. So the next one is one of my favorites. It's an absolute classic. It's filtered echo. So I've got these stabs here. And they could do with a little bit of echo, but I want to filter it to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to grab an echo device and I've put it on this return track here. And what this return track allows me to do is process just the wet signal of the echo. So I've got the echo device on here and I've put it to 100% wet. And then I'm going to send some of this stab here into the filtered echo over here. So right now it's just a normal echo device. There's no filtering going on, but I'm going to go grab an EQ and place it beforehand. You can place it before and after. They're going to have slightly different effects, but if I place it beforehand, I'm going to filter out around about 1K. And then I'm actually going to have a boost as well. And you'll see that where I boost, it's going to echo more. So It's a really cool effect. You can also try a filter, something like a bandpass that's moving around. It's going to make the echo give it a bit of a different vibe every time. And also experiment with using reverb as well. So filtered reverb is a really classic, awesome effect as well. I'm just going to go find my reverb here, place it in here, and have a listen to this. It's really awesome and super useful. So the next one is vocal sidechain. So what we're doing here is we're going to be sending this vocal to this reverb here. So I've got this reverb send set up here. It's just a FabFilter Pro R reverb, which is providing a lot of space. Have a listen.
Run away from me.
This is it dry.
Run away from me. I'm so empty. I'm no good, you see.
So the reverb here is providing a really nice space, but it's a little bit too intense and it sort of muddies up the vocal when the vocal's actually being sung. So a great and classic technique for helping this and helping the mix down in general is to actually add a sidechain compressor. And I'm going to expand this compressor and get the sidechain input from the vocal itself. So if I get the sidechain input from the vocal, what's actually going to happen is it's going to duck the reverb when the vocal's being sung. And then when the vocal stops being sung, the reverb's going to come back up. So the reverb's just going to sit back behind the vocal a little bit more, but still provide a really nice space in the background. So I've just put the sidechain in here and I'm just going to lower this threshold and let's see how it sounds.
I'm no good, you see. I'll hurt you gently. Run away from me.
So you can really hear that when the vocal's being sung there, the reverb is less intense. And then when the vocal stops being sung in the gaps between the words, you can hear that reverb come back in and it fills those gaps, fills that space really nicely.
Run away from me. I'm so empty.
You can also experiment with putting it beforehand. You might have to tweak the values a little bit, but the concept works in a similar way. Our next technique is what is called a delay throw. And if you don't know this one already, then you definitely should. It's when we have a delay or any time-based effect for that matter on a return track. So I'm going to just go grab a delay. Let's just grab a regular delay. So it's on this return track here, on this return track C. And what this allows us to do, if I put this onto 100% wet, I can actually delay just particular parts of this loop that I've got here. So I've got this synth loop, have a listen. Got some drums here as well to give it a bit of context. And so if I was to right click here and hit show automation, this is the automation of the send over here, right? So if I was to just put a little bump right here, then this is just going to send just the transient of this stab here into the delay. And that's going to continue delaying for whatever settings that we have set up on this delay here. So I'm just going to put it onto something like 1 so you can actually hear it. So what about if we sent this into the delay as well? We can experiment with sending a whole bunch of different parts into the delay. And like we've mentioned, this works the same way with reverb as well. So if I can just find where the reverb is, let's have a listen to the effect now. So remember, it's only going to reverb or delay just the parts where we automate, just the parts that we send it in, and it's going to continue reverbing and delaying that audio signal as it continues to play on. So if you just want little delays on little parts of your loop, this is a great technique. It's also a great way of making really ambient moving pads, because I can set up another return track with a different delay. So let's try the filter delay, because the filter delay is really cool. Some of these presets, I'm just going to grab this preset here, and then I'm going to show a few different ones of these in a few different lanes, and maybe even this echo from the beginning as well. And in here, I'm actually going to set the output from this, from the master, actually just to sends only. And have a look, if I just experiment with a few different sends here, so I'm just sending at random in different amounts, have a listen to the textures that it makes. So pretty cool and easy to do. You can expand on this further by putting like saturation or amp or distortion on any of these return tracks and see how that goes as well. So this next technique is an absolute classic in the recording world. It's double tracking for space and width. Have a listen to this little guitar progression that I just recorded. And I've actually recorded it twice, the exact same guitar progression, and have a listen to the next one and how similar it is. So it's the exact same chords, I've just recorded it twice. If I zoom in here, you can actually see that there is differences between them. Where I've strummed is slightly different just due to human error. And what you do in the recording world is you'll grab one of these and pan it to the left and one of these and pan it to the right. And the slight differences between the guitar takes makes a really wide feel. So have a listen to this. So that's all well and good, but what's so great about this technique is you can apply this to an electronic music sense in a similar way. So here I've got this hat loop and it sounds like this, right? So this hat loop is in mono, and if you wanted it to be wider, there's a whole suite of things that you can do. You can go grab an imaging plugin like Ozone Imager. You can do stuff like the Haas effect and grab a delay, which has a slightly different left and right delay, which makes it feel wide. These are all artificial ways of doing it though, and sometimes it gives it a bit of a weird feel. Often I like programming another loop that's similar to it and then panning them left and right. So here I have a drum rack, and I've got these sounds in here. And I'm going to use this loop here as a guide and make some sort of similar loop. So I've got this hat here, and I'm going to layer that on top of all of these 4 hats here. So I'm going to turn off my grid and just look up here and then place the MIDI notes on top of them. One about here. One around about there. Maybe another one just about here. And then on these other hits, let's use these ones as well. And let's have a look at how they layer together. So this is before, and this is after. And let's pan them left and right and see what effect this has. So it's a really cool way of applying this double tracking method into an electronic music context. Using the slight differences between the 2 hat loops, we're getting a more natural sense of width. The next technique is using multiple delays for interesting rhythms. So in this stab that I have here, the same stab as earlier on, I'm going to go to my return track. I'm going to send it in first of all, go to my return track and grab a delay. And this is just a dotted 8th note delay. I'm going to put this onto 100% dry wet and leave the feedback around about where it is. And then I'm actually going to duplicate this delay with Command D. And I'm going to change the rate at which it's delaying slightly and bring the feedback back as well and see how this goes. So you can see how it's making some interesting rhythms. If I take that off, you can see just the regular rhythm. And then you can hear what this is doing when I add multiple delays together. So it's important to note here, I've got the first one on 100% dry wet, and then this one on around about 40. You can experiment with maybe putting this on 100 and this one putting it on 40, but it's also important to set these different delays at different rates. So this one may be on 2 or 4 or 1, and this one on 3, and or maybe on 6 even. So this is a great technique for making a little bit more interesting rhythmic delays that speed up or slow down or change. The last one, of course, here is gated reverb. So I have this same house rhythm. And if I wanted to gate a reverb from this clap here, I'm just going to actually use this reverb send that I already have set up and go grab a gate device. So the classic old school way of doing it is you just grab your clap or your snare or whatever you want to make this effect with, send it into the return track with a reverb on it, and then just grab your gate device and lower the threshold until you have that desired effect. You can also experiment with this release time to see how much of an effect that you want. And also the return value here as well. So this is the old school way of doing it, but if you want a more of a precise effect, what you can do is expand this gate and switch on the sidechain, and then just get the input from the clap that you're using. And now because the clap is triggering it, it's going to be much more snappy, and you can use this release value to get the exact amount that you want. So if you just want a little bit for a little bit of thickness, if you want a little bit more, you can increase this release. And then you can dial it into taste over here. Alright, so those are just 7 of my favorite ones, but there is so many classic techniques out there. If you're interested, I really recommend go looking it up for yourself. It's quite fun to use inspiration from classic techniques like this and just trying to adapt them to your tracks in modern ways and see what ideas you can come up with. If you've enjoyed the video today, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.